Hi guys, welcome back to my studio. I love trying new things. So today I'm throwing plates using roofing felt. Sounds weird, I know, but I will explain as we go along. I'm starting out by weighing out 3-pound chunks of clay and wedging it. This is reclaimed clay, so it's got lots of bubbles. I'm doing a combination of slam wedging and my typical ram's horn wedging, just trying to get all the bubbles out and get it all consistent and ready to throw. While I'm wedging, I want to talk to you more about the problems I'm sometimes having with plates and other large, flattish thrown pots. The big problem is that bigger items are just hard to wire off the bat. The wire wants to bow up across the distance and cut the bottom thinner in some spots and thicker in others. It makes it hard to trim them nicely, and it risks cutting right through the bottom of the pot. Yeah, I haven't had that happen too many times, but it's really frustrating when it does happen. I knew I wanted these plates to be more lightweight and not have a foot ring, and to not risk slicing through them while wiring off, which is more of a risk with a thin pot, so I decided to try the roofing felt bat method. I took a chunk of roofing felt off the roll, then traced my normal bat that I'd be using on it, and then cut out the circles that I traced. I didn't bother getting them exactly perfect, just cut them slightly smaller than the bat I was using. Now, the disadvantage of this technique is that it's hard to buy small amounts of roofing felt, and you don't really need a huge roll of it for this. I happen to have some left over from the roofing of my studio last year, so I had some sitting around. But if you're a potter, maybe you could split a roll with other potter friends, or maybe you're not a potter and you don't need to worry about sourcing roofing felt. I would actually love to know in the comments if you are a potter, or an admirer of pottery, or even just someone who likes interesting videos. Let me know in the comments. The next step was to attach the roofing felt to my normal bats. It's still necessary to use a typical bat for this, as the plate will fold like a taco if it doesn't have a stiff backing when you go to get it off the wheel. The first way I tried to attach the roofing felt to the bat was to just use some of my throwing water to attach it to the bat. This didn't work at all. Then I tried using a small piece of clay and spreading it out over the bat, just some fresh clay out of the bag. Then adding the roofing felt and going over it with a sponge to get it to really stick. This worked just fine, and I used this method for most of the plates. Later on into throwing, I just used a chunk of the clay and the slip from my splash pan. I didn't do this earlier, as I started with a pretty clean wheel, but after it was messy, this was the easiest method for me. The clay and slip mixture was more wet and spread out a bit easier than the fresh clay. However, both methods worked equally well for holding the roofing felt to the bat, so either method's great. Just don't use water. That doesn't work. Then it was on to the really fun stuff, the throwing. Normally I keep my plates maybe like an inch thick and then trim a foot ring into them later to take out some of the bulk. This time I wanted to try throwing them thinner and just keep the back of them flat with no foot ring. That way I could keep them a little more lightweight and cut down on trimming time as well. Plus, I just like trying new things. I threw these like I would any other plate. I coned up and down to center the clay, and then I started spreading it out. I like to use the side of my fist for this. It just feels most comfortable to me. I also used the sponge to get it even thinner and more spread out. Hey, and here's a trick for getting plates to be pretty consistent. There's the obvious of starting with the same amount of clay, but if you also start with the same size bats, you can spread the clay to the edge of the bat before making the rim. This way, you're using the bat itself as a size template, and it's easier to get them pretty consistent. I rarely make sets of things, but I realized that I've been making more plates lately, and I didn't make any for me. So these are meant to be mine, and hey, I'm actually making a set. I started out with 8 balls of clay, but I ended up having a lot of fun making these plates, and started making more. So, after throwing all 10 plates, I let them dry overnight. And then I went to wire them off. And this is where I realized my mistake. I really should have wired them off right after I threw them. So if you're trying this method, do that. Wire them off right away. Over the winter, they would have been still pretty wet in the morning, but with the weather changing to spring, they dried quicker and were leather hard by morning. Now, this is where I really appreciated the roofing felt, though. Normally, I probably would have sliced through some of the plates, having to wire through them when they were that firm. However, the roofing felt prevented that, so they were hard to wire off, but they all survived. I just put the wire between the rigid bat and the roofing felt and wired them off. It would have been easier with the clay wetter, again, had I wired it off right away, but the roofing felt kept the wire from going into the plate itself, so it was a success. And it was rather satisfying peeling off the roofing felt from the bottom of the plates. You can see my putting bubble wrap under the plates. This is to support in the middle so it doesn't sag while it's drying. I ended up changing to paper towels later on as the bubble wrap was collecting condensation and the plates need to dry evenly so they don't crack. After wiring them off and removing the roofing felt, I covered them and left them overnight. I probably could have actually trimmed them at this point, but I had other stuff to take care of, so I left them overnight again. Covering them slowed their drying, so by the next day they were still great to carve, and maybe a bit better than the night before, as they were slightly more firm. The roofing felt did leave the bottom of the plates a bit rough, but with a bit of trimming it was just fine. I didn't have to do much trimming as the plates were already pretty thin, so it was pretty easy. Overall, I like this method for sure, and I could see me doing it again in the future. Didn't lose any plates, they all turned out great, I love it. Of course, when I was done throwing and trimming, I wasn't really done. I carved each and every plate in a different way. Some got flowers, some got more abstract designs, some were pretty simple, and others were a bit more time-consuming. I love how they all turned out, and I'm excited to finish these. I have a cool glaze idea in mind that's going to look awesome. I am planning on using these particular plates for my family, but I have plenty of other pottery for purchase at my website. The link's in the description, so check that out, and hey, thanks for watching! Oh, hey, and my latest kiln opening was super cool. You should check it out. The link's right here. Go ahead, click it.